Hello and welcome to part two of our discussion regarding long-term debt and more specifically bonds payable. So we discussed in my Wednesday section yesterday and my Thursday section, or Tuesday, Thursday, we'll talk about this afternoon, but we got an introduction to bonds. We learned about some terminology. And we started talking about the concept of selling bonds, bond pricing, and how interest is paid. What I'm going to do today is I'm going to use the examples in the PowerPoints, but I'm actually going to present them a little bit differently. So what you're going to see right now is an Excel spreadsheet. And this Excel spreadsheet takes the information from the PowerPoints, starting with, let's see, slide 13. I'm sorry, no, slide, bear with me a minute. Starting with slide 10, issuing bonds payable at par. And this is a fairly easy, I said slide 10, maybe it's slide 9. Sorry about that. It was on a different slide. We're going to use this one because it's actually fairly straightforward and it is, the numbers are pretty easy. Okay. So if you recall, we said that when bonds are issued at par, what that means is that the interest rate that the bonds are going to pay is identical to the market rate. All right. And so what I've done here is I've set up a little chart and we've got the par value, the stated value of 100,000. Okay. I've already put the contract rate, the coupon rate of 9%. The term, okay, is 5 years, all right? And the interest payments, let me go to the next slide. The interest payments are twice a year, okay? So semi-annually. Right? So what that means, it doesn't mean that the bondholder is going to get 9% every time there is an interest payment. Every time there's an interest payment, the bondholder is going to get 4.5%. Remember, 9% is an annual rate. So the bondholders are getting their annual interest in 2 installments. That's the best way to think of it. All right. So the bonds are issued on January 1st, right? And the problem tells us that interest payments occur each January 1st and July 1st. Well, if the bonds are issued on January 1st of 2018, the first interest payment is going to be July 1st of 2018, right? And what is that interest payment going to be? It's going to be the principal times the coupon rate times 1/2, right? $4,500. This is the interest payment, and it's also the interest expense because bonds sold at par. So whenever you have bonds that sell at par, in other words, the coupon rate, the contract rate, the stated rate is equal to the market rate, your interest payment is simply equal to your interest expense. And so every 6 months for the next 5 years, all right, there is going to be a journal entry recorded. Now, there is a little bit of, should be 7/1/2018. Got the date wrong there. There would be an adjusting entry on December 31st of 2018 for the interest expense. So I'm going to skip over that. The textbook, this particular textbook, does address that. Let me just see. Yes, so on December 31st, what you're going to see on slide number 11, you're going to see an accrual for interest expense on December 31st of 2018. And you'll notice there isn't a cash payment because the cash payment isn't made until the next day, right? So you'll see December 31st, 2018, interest expense, interest payable. Then on January 1st of 2019, there would be a debit to interest payable and a credit to cash. I don't want you to worry too much about that. What I want you to focus on and understand, okay, is that when bonds sell at par, the interest expense is going to be equal to the interest that is paid. That's the important thing, all right? So we're going to have, so this is 1/1, we're going to make the interest payments of 4,500. I'm going to make a note here, interest expense accrued on December 31st, payment made January 1st. Okay. And that's because there's been 6 months of the use of that money in 2018. We have to record the expense related to it as a 2018 expense. It probably would have been easier if we had issued the bonds on December 31st, but doesn't matter. Okay. So we're going to do this, all right, every 6 months for the next 5 years. All right. And then what you're going to see is that on January 1st of 2023, okay, so bonds mature January 1st, 2023, right? And what happens when those bonds mature? We've already paid the interest, so we're going to pay back $100,000 of principal returned to the bondholders. Okay, not too complicated. Pretty straightforward when bonds are issued at par. All right, I'm going to take a short break for an interruption, and I will be right back. Okay, I am back, and we left off discussing issuing bonds at par, and we talked about the various components related to bonds and bond issuance. And now we are going to turn our attention to issuing bonds payable at a discount. All right, so let me put the same, almost the same information up. So everything in our Southwest Airlines example is going to be the same with one exception, and that is our market rate of interest. Because when bonds are issued at a discount, by default, that means that the market rate is higher than the coupon or the contract rate. What I'm going to do is I am going to show you how we calculate the selling price of this bond. And this introduces to you the concept of the time value of money. So we have two things going on here. First of all, we have a bond that's going to pay interest at a rate that is less than what a rational investor could get on the open market someplace else, right? That's number one. The second thing is that we basically have payment of interest over time, as well as the payment of principal, okay, 5 years from now, right? So there are annuity tables, and often what you'll see in the textbooks are the use of annuity tables, but we have the wonderful software tool called Excel, okay? And that is what we are going to use. So we are going to calculate the present value first of the bond's face value. Right? How do I do that? Okay. I go to formulas, I go to financial formulas, and I scroll down and I see a present value. Right? Now, the rate that I am pricing this bond at, okay, is the market rate. But remember, that market rate, that 10%, is an annual rate, and I am making interest payments, all right, every 6 months. So I am going to take the market rate and I'm going to divide that by 2, or 5%. How many periods? Okay, the number of periods is equal to the number of interest payments we are going to make on these bonds, right? And that happens to be 10, right? The bonds are 5-year bonds. I'm making my interest payments semi-annually. So the number of payments is going to be 10. And the future value, the amount that I am going to pay in 5 years, is $100,000. Okay? And that should give me the present value. Excel always does this negative. Okay? So the present value of $100,000 is going to be paid in 5 years at a market rate of 10%, all right, is $61,391.33. Right? But that's only part of it. Now I have to calculate the present value of the interest payments. Okay? That annuity, that stream of payments that are going to be made every 6 months for 5 years. Once again, I go to my present value table. Okay? And once again, I am looking at a market rate of 10% divided by 2. Number of periods is still 10. Okay. And what is the interest payment that is going to be made every 6 months? I'm looking at it right here, $4,500. Right? So when I calculate that, okay, and that gives me a selling price of $96,400. $139.13. Okay, so that is the selling price of my bonds. The difference between the stated value, the par value of the bonds, and my selling price is the discount. All right, now what you're going to see if you're comparing the discount I calculated to the discount that's in the PowerPoints, you're going to see about a $10.87 difference. Okay, and that's because the tables that would be used, the textbook tables that would be used to calculate this, only go out 4 or 5 decimal points. All right, Excel, of course, goes out ad infinitum. All right, so that $10 difference is really just rounding. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to note here discount in Excel. Okay, discount, okay, tables, textbook. Okay, for our purposes, we'll go ahead and we'll use the amount in the textbook, just because that's what all the calculations are based on. So we're going to go ahead and use that one. This discount that we just calculated represents additional interest expense that Southwest will record over the next 5 years. All right, how does that work? All right, well, we know on July 1st of 2018, okay, we know that on July 1st of 2018, Southwest is going to pay $4,500 to its bondholders. Southwest is going to record interest expense equal to the payment plus the discount amortization. And how do we calculate the discount amortization? We simply take the discount, all right, $3,850, and we divide it by the 10 payment periods of interest we're going to make. And when we do that, okay, what we see is that we come up with total interest expense okay, $4,500 plus $385. We don't pay the bondholders this $385. The bondholders get the benefit of the discount when the company, when Southwest, pays the bonds back at full par value in 5 years. Okay, so what happens is the bondholders are giving $96,150, call it, okay, to Southwest. In exchange, every 6 months, they're going to get $4,500 cash interest. And at the end of 5 years, when the bonds are paid in full on January 1st of 2023, they're going to get back $100,000. That difference, that discount, represents additional interest revenue to the bondholders, and it represents additional interest expense to Southwest. This is, again, the classic, a classic example of accrual accounting, right? We're recording an expense that has two pieces to it. One is a cash piece, the $4,500, but the other piece of the expense, the $385, doesn't involve the payment of cash, but in fact, it represents an increase in expense. Okay. So this is another way of looking at the PowerPoint examples. The slides in the PowerPoints really focus on the journal entries and how we record the carrying value of bonds, and you know, how we record discounting, or how we record the amortization of the discount. Okay. My focus here is less about journal entries and certainly much more about your understanding of what we've done. All right. So we have additional interest expense in the form of a discount. That interest expense is spread out over the life of the bond. All right. And at the end of the bond term, all right, we are paying back $100,000. All right. Let's see. One of the things that I'm going to show you now is actually not in the PowerPoints. I'm going to show you issuing bonds payable at a premium. We are not going to cover effective interest amortization. Again, if you plan to continue on in accounting, you will have plenty of opportunity to review this topic in intermediate. Okay, but this material, quite frankly, is hard enough without adding another component. Okay, so let me give you one more example. Okay, and this is going to be issuing bonds payable at a premium. So we talked about selling bonds that pay an interest rate that is less than the market rate. But what happens if our bonds actually pay more than the market rate? How does that work? Okay, well, the process in terms of present value calculation is the same, okay? Except our numbers are going to change, right? So I am going to go back to my financial formulas. I'm going to pick up my present value, okay? But now my rate is, my market rate is 8% divided by 2. It's still 10 periods. Oops. And the future value is still 100,000. Okay. So now when the market rate is 8%, okay, the present value of my bonds, okay, is actually $67,556 and some change. How about my interest payments? Okay. Once again, go back to my formulas, okay? And my market rate is still 8%, still 10 periods, okay? And the payment that I'm making is the 40, oops, I didn't want to do that. I wanted to pull it up here, 4,500. Okay. So there is the present value of the stream of those interest payments. And that leaves me with a present value of $104,000. $4,055.45. What does that mean? That means that because Southwest bonds are paying more than an investor could get in the open market, all right, the investor is willing to pay a little bit more for those bonds. All right. We call that a premium. Okay. What happens with a premium is exactly opposite of what happens with a discount. Okay. So the company is still going to make interest payments every 6 months of $4,500. But the interest expense when the bond sells at a premium is actually reduced by the amortization of that premium, right? So in this particular example, okay, I'm taking my interest expense, and that's actually going to equal my interest payment minus my premium amortization, right? And I'm going to keep it simple. I'm not going to deal with the pennies. I'm just going to say $4,055. And we're going to amortize that over 10 years. So that means, okay, that my interest is actually $4,500 minus $405.50. Because what's happening is the bondholders are paying Southwest $104,000 and $104,055 and change. And at the end of 5 years, Southwest is only going to pay the bondholders back $100,000. Okay. All right. So I am going to post this file, all right, under chapter 9, all right. So let me get it saved here before I lose it and all that work is gone. So bond selling price examples in connection with the lecture. Okay, so I will get that up and posted, all right? And now let's finish up with chapter 9, okay? So I've already said that we are going to, we're not going to talk about effective interest amortization. All of our amortization is straight line. We're not going to talk about other features of bonds payable, okay? And there are other long-term liabilities, okay? Deferred income taxes, installment notes. But basically that's going to pretty much wrap this up, except for the concept of an installment note, which I told you I would discuss briefly. So the idea of an installment note, all right, is basically you borrow a sum of money, okay, at a fixed interest rate, and that installment note is paid back over time with a combination of principal and interest, all right? And so you might say, well, how does that work, all right? Well, let me go back to my spreadsheet here, all right? And let's do some real simple examples. So we're going to have principal of $100,000. Our interest rate is going to be 4%. And the term of the loan is going to be 30 years. Payments are going to be made monthly. Okay. Now, what I'm going to say is this is the most common type of loan for the purchase of a residence. Okay. So someday, hopefully not in the too far distant future, all of you will graduate. You'll get really good jobs because you've gone to our great Whitman School of Management, and you're going to be in a position to purchase a home. You probably aren't going to have sufficient cash to make that purchase, so you're going to have to borrow money. All right. And so the first thing that we're going to look at here, okay, is what is the monthly payment going to be? We're now going to calculate the monthly payment for this fairly simple, straightforward example, okay? So once again, we're going to go back to our formulas. We're going to go to financial formulas, and we see financial formula called payment, right? What is our rate? The interest rate is 4%. But remember that 4% is an annual rate. We are making monthly payments. So we have to make sure that we've taken that annual rate and basically converted it into a monthly rate. Number of periods. Very simply, this is a 30-year installment loan, but it's going to be paid back monthly, okay, over that 30 years. So the total number of payments that we're going to make is going to be 360. How do we get that? 30 years times 12 months in a year equals 360. The final part of this formula is, okay, the payment amount, okay? And so the present value, the amount that is being borrowed is $100,000. And this is going to ultimately, okay, give us that monthly payment amount, okay, based on constant payments at a constant interest rate, right? And so when we plug all those numbers in, we see that our monthly payment is $477.42. Now, that consists of interest and principal. And what happens is, as we make this monthly payment, okay, we are going to apply a portion of it to interest and a portion of it to principal. How do we do that? We start with the first payment. With the first payment, okay, we apply the interest to the outstanding balance, okay? But remember, my interest rate is an annual rate, okay? I have to divide that by 12 months, okay? So I have to take my 4%, I have to divide it by 12, okay? And then I'm going to multiply it by my unpaid balance. My unpaid balance for the first payment is the whole amount that I borrowed, right? And when I do that, okay, I see that $333.33 is applied to interest. The rest of it is going to be applied to principal. when I apply that to principal, that means I take 100,000 minus what do I have applied to principal, and that is the ending balance that I owe. And I'm going to do this for every single payment. Now, I'm only going to go down a few, right? Okay. So now the second payment, all right? The second payment, I'm going to apply 4%, but I'm going to apply it to my outstanding balance, all right? Remembering once again, all right, that I have to divide that interest rate by 12. And so on my second payment, the interest is $332.85. Subtract that from the payment, that means $144.56 is applied to the balance. And now I see that my balance goes down again. All right, and I'm going to do this every time, okay? So I'm going to copy this formula, but I am going to lock my interest rate, right? I want to lock my interest rate. Actually, let me do this. Let me get rid of that altogether. Let me just get rid of this whole cell and let me lock my cells up here. So I'm going to lock my interest rate, okay? But I'm going to apply that to the remaining balance. So I want that to carry forward. All right, so now when I copy this down, okay, I can see, all right, let me make sure that that took that on E10, which it did. All right, and I'm going to copy this. And then I'm going to copy my remaining balance, all right? And I am going to, oops, that's not right. Let's see, I want E10 minus C11. Yep, okay, that is right, all right? And so I'm going to do this, all right, all the way down for all these cells. Okay. And what I'm going to see, okay, is that at the end of, what do I got there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. At the end of 10 months, okay, the remaining balance on my loan is $98,537.37. Okay. And so I have a long way to go to pay it off. But what you should also be noticing is every time a payment is made, okay, the amount of interest applied begins to decrease because I'm reducing the principal balance. So the interest goes down, the amount applied to principal goes up, and that is how I begin to whittle away at the balance on the loan. Okay, so that's an example of an installment note. You will see this at some point, certainly in your careers, certainly in your own personal lives. And this is what is commonly referred to as an amortization table. And for people who buy homes with 30-year mortgages, that amortization table generally is about 5 or 6 pages when you get it in your packet with your closing documents. All right, so that's just a little introduction into the concept. So with that, that ends chapter 9, okay? And I will see all of you either today, Thursday, or next week. Have a good weekend, everyone.